scenes where someone is rejected hit viscerally because it's an instinctual fear that we have ingrained from hundreds of thousands of years
They're
of
already
surviving.
reading the book and they don't even know it. They're doing the exact thing that you want them to do, as opposed to like passively scrolling on their phone.
Once you have quite a catalog, you'll start to see trends in what the readers are responding. That really saved me time, especially when I went wide, was to have a...
Welcome everybody to the BookFunnel podcast. This is episode 4, and joining us today is Kate Hall. Welcome, Kate. How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. Trying to keep warm. It's like cold out, and so my entire house is cold, and I'm not ready to turn the heat on yet.
I hear you. I hear you. We're here to talk about TikTok today, which I hear is something you know a thing or two about, right? Maybe?
I've actually never heard of it. Could you explain it to me?
Well, you see, no.
Oh.
But yeah, tell us a little bit about, just kind of give us an introduction to you. And obviously it's going to be our main topic today. We'll get into that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I had not been using TikTok for my own books. I've been publishing since 2020, did really well in 2020, did okay in 2021. And in 2022, I went flat broke, and I was a full-time author at that point, and I was making like no money. And one of my friends hired me to just post on one of her accounts, just post like slideshows or something on one of her accounts. And it was just so I could make a little bit of extra money. And I was like, well, she believes in me, so I'm going to learn everything there is to know about this thing. And then I did. And then the next month she was like, someone else wants to hire you. And then like a week later, she was like, someone else wants to hire you.
Right.
Accidentally created this massive business that has completely changed my life. And I've learned seriously everything I can about TikTok constantly. It's nonstop. I will say one thing people always tell me is they're like, I refuse to learn it because TikTok is always changing. I would say that there are micro things that change, like, ooh, this font might get you, 98% of the views you would have gotten, but it's not changed. It doesn't change on a day-to-day basis the way people think it does. And I think part of the reason that I do what I do and that I talk to people about it is because I'm like, listen, I get that TikTok is scary and people say TikTok is very hard, but I am so lazy. I don't want to do a bunch of things. I want to market my books for 20 minutes a day, tops, and be done. I don't want to work. Right. I want to hang out with my kid. I want to ride my horses, and I want to market my smutty books easily. I found a way that makes it really easy for me, and that has made it really easy for a lot of people.
Before we get too far along here, I do have to touch base with Kelli, because we've been keeping track of your journey, right? Getting back in to the swing of self-publishing. Where are we at? Do you have updates for me? Do we have some good news so we can share with the people?
I did. I've been working on the prequel. So I know I'm supposed to be doing my reader magnet, and I'm still just gotten book 1 up as my reader magnet. But I'm working, finally getting the writing, the plot bunnies are there. So I've been getting words down. So that's what I need to do. It's just been really, work's been a little bit crazy, and we're getting ready for, some trips and stuff like that for not just our trip to Author Nation next week. We'll see you there. But also, just family stuff. So, trying to find the time and those energy pennies, man, that's still a thing. So I'm working on it though.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Emma, have you put together a holiday bundle yet? Because you've been talking about this. I want to know if it's something you've gone and done.
No, actually, I actually got distracted and launched my first German translation this week. So
that's right.
That's exciting.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that's totally fine, by the way. I'm not trying to but put you on blast or anything like that. But I can't remember what you were using for that. Of some sort of service.
It's called Scribe Shadow, and it uses software to translate, and then you send it to a human translator who will then do the final proofreading for you. And I had a good experience with course, I can't read it myself so there's some nail biting there, but I
Yeah.
figure I'll just watch reviews.
Yeah. That's something we'll have to keep tabs. I'm making notes right now so that I can remember to keep tabs, because I would be interested to know if you do get some feedback from like German readers. Like,
And
what
we'll have
do they
to
have to
ask
say?
Kate later about TikTok when you're doing translations. If you start bookmark that question, if you want to start a separate page or how that works. I don't even know if they have TikTok in
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
TikTok in Germany.
Let let's
Yeah, yeah.
let's bookmark
Bookmark
that.
that.
Bookmark that one. That's a good one. All right. So, we're going to get to our first segment here, though. We're tips from the trenches. This segment, those of you who have watched the podcast before, you'll know Emma, Kelli, myself, we're the BookFunnel author support team, but we are also authors ourselves. And so we have some, knowledge and advice from our years of self-publishing. And but not only that, being part of the BookFunnel author support team, we help authors every day, not just with like BookFunnel, but I tell you guys, you might not believe it, how many questions we get from authors just asking us general self-publishing knowledge. And sometimes it also feels, and Emma and Kelli, I know you guys can attest to this, it also sometimes feels like we are the support team for other services as well out there. Like, how many times do we get people asking us about, like, how do I set up MailerLite? How do I do all this? Even though MailerLite has their own support and that sort of thing. So we help authors with all sorts of things. And so we have quite a bit of knowledge to share. And so in this segment, we'll each share a little tip, kind of discuss it a little bit, like we normally do. Who wants to go first this time? Who am I looking at? Kelli?
I can
Kelli,
go
you got one?
first. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. I
go
have
for
one.
it.
Yay. Okay, so one of the things that I don't have quite the backlist that a lot of other people have, but one of the things that really saved me time, especially when I went wide, was to have a metadata spreadsheet, and it has everything about each book. So like I have a different sheet for each book. Each book has like its ASIN, and if I have an ISBN, and it has taglines and things that I can pull from it I have like an elevator pitch that I can put into a Facebook post or something like that. I'll even put some of my ad copy in there. But it has, when I went wide, one of the things was, you're putting your links everywhere, and they're everywhere. Like you have, 10 links for the same book. So I keep a copy of each link to each of my things. So if somebody's like, well, I only read on Apple, I can send them that. But it's everything, the ASIN, everything that goes with it. And that way, you can keep track of it. And then I just copy that page, create a new one, and then do it for every book. And then that way, especially if you have a big backlist, like right now, I have a smaller backlist. It's easier for me to do that now.
Yep.
So if you have a backlist or you're just getting started, start it now and just have, all the information for that book. So it's in one stop shop. I keep it on my desktop, on my computer. So I can just click on it anywhere I am. It's like a Google sheet. It's not like majorly impressive, but I think it really does help save time, especially when you have when you start getting that bigger backlist and you just have all that information just there.
Right. Well, it's funny because now I'm thinking about it, like how much of that information I have that is just all over the place and not in one spot. You don't think about it, especially as you create subsequent releases, just how much information you have out there, and to consolidate it in one place. I'm gonna need you to send me that so I can copy it, because it
Yeah,
sounds like
I'll clean one up and I'll make it like just a blank one, and I'll send it. And we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I don't remember where I got it. Can't take credit. I know that it was kind of passed around in a group or something, and so I can't take credit for creating the entire thing. I did add to it,
Kelli.
though.
You can.
I know, I'm so good at that.
You're fine. Emma, do you got something for us today?
It's more of a show and tell because I've been diving into Kate's TikTok class and doing all of the graphics I need for my upcoming release. So I decided to take a trip to my local thrift store and buy a bunch of tchotchkes and make my own backdrop. which you can't, the lighting is bad, but when you film it on the phone, there's actually kind of a lot of little moments you can use to make like the custom TikTok backdrops or a flat lay for Instagram. And the backdrop came from Amazon, but the rest of it was stuff I had in my house I repurposed in the thrift store.
Yeah.
And it's done in like my dark academia witch core, so I think it crosses over between like dark romance, paranormal, and fantasy. So I can get a bit of crossover there. But yeah, if you want your own custom, don't go out and spend a lot of money, boo. And staging is easy. You just throw it at the wall and stare at it.
Yeah. And and I don't want to break the illusion because it looks really good on camera. You said the lighting is bad.
Yeah.
I maybe could use a little bit more light, but I do think it looks great even here. But earlier I saw this yesterday or the other day.
So-
I can't remember when it was. And I thought that there were actual like shelves there with books. And when you said you had gone to the thrift store, that you'd actually gotten all those little things. But that's a backdrop, right? That top part there.
Was that like one of those tapestry things?
Yeah,
Like
it's just one
the
of those thin printed tapestries, and it's on Velcro. So if it falls during the podcast, well, hey.
I can edit it out. Don't worry. I will edit that out if that happens. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Really well.
Right. No, I think that's great because one of the things about if you're going to start posting on social media, especially if you're going to be like recording yourself in a context, those are the things you don't think about until then you're actively doing it and you're like up against a wall and people can see all the random little chips in your drywall and that sort of thing and the stain from where your toddler had thrown their Uncrustable and all that stuff. Because yeah, that's I think that's life for most of us here, from what I understand.
Professional assets can cost a lot of money sometimes when you're going, and not just money, but time when you're trying to search for all the different flat lays. I mean, if you can create something on your own, which
Yeah.
again is fun too. So
it gives you a nice writing environment too. If you think about like this is your writing environment, you're gonna sit at your desk and you've got your little cave of your little nook of writing, and I love that. That's good.
And no one can see all the children's toys,
that's true. All right, Kate, if you've got one, I do have one, but I'll let you go first since you're our guest today. If you want to share a tip with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I had a different tip, but Emma, yours actually, you were talking about lighting. And since a lot of what I do talks about video, every 3 feet away from a light source you get, you lose 50% of your light. So my big recommendation is if you're doing any sort of video marketing where your face is on camera or you are trying to record like your book or something, get as close to a natural light source as you can. Stand really close to a window, or have like a really good ring light or something, because when you lose that 50% of the light and you're, say, 15 feet away from your window, your video is going to start to get really pixelated, and that's going to make people see it as less professional because it won't be as crisp. It'll look like fuzzy. So when you're recording, like I like to record a lot of my videos where I'm like holding a copy of my book instead of doing like, oh, I have this really fancy bookshelf. I don't. I have like a cart with books on it. Instead, I will literally just go outside, go over a patch of grass with like 8 dogs running over here. I'm not exaggerating. We have 10 dogs. And I'll just go over a patch of grass and hold the book and just record from here so that it's outside and it has good lighting. Or I'll sit in my car and like have the book against my steering wheel or something because there's pretty good natural light in the driver's seat of a car.
No, a lot of people on social media record in their cars, I think for that reason.
Yeah, I think the
Incidentally.
3 feet was really interesting because my lamp is literally maybe half a foot in front of my face, and my face is bright, but it's about 3 feet from the lamp to the back of the backdrop. So I was wondering, why is it so dark with the lamp?
And this is stuff you don't need to know to write a book. But then once you're going to be promoting that book on social media, like you have to know this stuff. So no, that's a good tip. Absolutely. So
I went to film school. This is what I use film school for.
Okay. So there you go. Now that makes sense. Now that makes you have some extra knowledge and expert. I'll have to keep that in mind as we move on. So my tip,
ISO, white balance. Sorry, go ahead.
yes. No, you're good. You're good. So my tip is more related to outlining today. I've been doing kind of some other ones related to writing the last few episodes. And so one thing that I try to do in my outlines, because there's a number of ways to outline. You can outline chronologically. You can follow a certain scheme. There's all sorts of different strategies out there. But one thing that I found was helpful, especially when like outlining a whole series. So trying to have a concept for a whole series is to have touchstones that you're going to touch on in each book in that series, right? So if you think of it, I don't, not coming unfortunately with a really good example today. I should have thought of this ahead of time. That oh yeah, you should probably have an example to explain this to people. But I'm sure you folks can probably conjure up one on their own, which is like any series, like even series of movies or TV shows where there's some either maybe a relationship between two characters or some type or place or something like that that gets revisited over and over again and you come back to. And it's a great way to also show how things have changed because those maybe you have two characters in book one who are friends or enemies. And then by, the end of the series, that has changed. Or maybe the place that they're in has some new meaning to it, depending on what's happened there or what's happened between those people. So having certain touchstones, if you will, that are like this type of thing is going to be recurring in each book in the series, or I'm going to revisit this, or, well, here is an example, right? I have a bad feeling about this, right? Even a line that gets reused, right? In different settings by different characters, but those little touchstones that can help you weave those threads to make everything seem connected. Because I think sometimes it's easy to write a plot that maybe makes sense, like it's logically consistent, right? And all the events make sense, but it doesn't necessarily feel connected unless you have those things woven into each other. So there you go. Touchstones.
Yep.
That's my tip. All right. So we are going to be moving on to our main topic today, which is TikTok for authors. And this is why we brought Kate onto the podcast today specifically. Because of her knowledge and experience on the topic. When I think about TikTok, it's probably different than what Emma and Kelli might be thinking. What I see is that maybe it's working really well for authors in certain genres, romance perhaps. I'm a science fiction author. How does TikTok work based on your genre? How do you have to approach it differently depending on your genre? Or is it pretty much where you can kind of do the same sorts of things? And it's just, maybe that's just my perception and that's not actually reality.
So this is a complex question with a complex answer, and I'm so sorry for
Good.
how long
Yeah.
this answer is going to
No,
take.
that's totally fine.
So one thing I like to tell people is that while I teach you how to use TikTok, I'm not just teaching you how to upload a video to TikTok. It's secretly a marketing course because marketing is my hashtag passion.
Yeah.
I'm really into data and analytics and marketing psychology, and that sounds really complex, but it doesn't have to be. The biggest thing, and I think that like T. Taylor, when she talks about universal fantasy, Kelli, we were talking about that earlier, how you even have her universal fantasy romance guide on your desk.
I do. Yep.
Yeah, so when she talks about universal fantasy, the big thing is that we are appealing to what people want. And I would also go on to say, when we're talking about marketing our books, we're not just talking about what people want, we are letting them think of what they want. And in some ways, that can be very romance specific because book talk is very romance centric. But there are plenty of people on TikTok who don't read romance books, who love sci-fi, who want to read sci-fi books. And the big thing we still want to focus on there is what makes us human. We want to focus on, a sense of justice for the characters, because in the end, all of us want to see, we want to relate to somebody and see them get a good thing happen to them, or we want to see somebody wrong the character and then that person get what's coming to them. Right. So,
Right.
one example is actually I just did a sci-fi book. I pulled hooks for a client for a sci-fi book, and it's not a romance book. There is a minor romance, but it's not really a big romance arc because it's a established couple who has marital issues because the guy is a scientist working on androids. It was a really cool book. But one of the big things in the book was that the main male character was basically being held captive by the temple who purchased the lab where he worked. And so he was being forced to continue his research under duress, under the threat of the fact that his son had been kidnapped and was literally being held hostage and held in a prison cell by this temple that says that they don't do that to the public. They say they don't do that. And he was not able to see his family, and his family was told that he has left the planet, literally told him that he's left the whole planet, that he's gone to Mars. And so the emotional hook that I used, that is one of, I think, the best ones that I pulled from the book, is it's not the fact that he's trapped here and he's having to do his research on his android. The scene that I pulled is that he is trapped in this lab and it hasn't been allowed to leave. And he gets a very cold, matter-of-fact phone call from a police officer that his mother has drowned. And then his boss contacts him and says, "Sorry for your loss. Let us know if we can help with the funeral. You obviously can't go." And so he's just been absolutely heartlessly crushed, finding out that his mother, who he hasn't spoken to enough, has passed away. We have either lost parents or have the fear of losing a parent or in some way or another. And so people are seeing like, oh my God, this guy loves his mom and she died and he can't do anything about it. He has no control over the situation. He can't even help plan the funeral. And that's the thing that people are going to want justice for him. They want him to burn this lab to the ground, not because he's been trapped there and has to work and because there are androids with human minds in them. They want him to burn it to the ground for his mom.
Well, you just saying that made me mad. Just thinking about that, like putting myself in their shoes. And I think everybody, it's very relatable too, to also have like a boss who's like, "Oh, you're sick today. You still have to come to work." Like that's not the same thing, but people can relate to that aspect of it.
Or we've seen so much especially in like retail and working in a restaurant positions in the US, where a boss will be like, "Oh, your dad died. Well, can you come in the day after the funeral? Or why are you taking 3 days off when the funeral is one day and it's here in town?"
Very relatable.
It's just like that soul-crushing helplessness because we have to keep the job to pay the bills. We might not be trapped in the lab by this evil company that owns us, but we feel trapped in a way. And I think everyone can relate to that feeling of feeling trapped and not being able to do anything about it.
Well, and then trying to get justice, like you want that character to get justice for the things they're putting them through.
Yes, exactly. Although then you were talking about how this is a different genre. I've had a lot of people ask me about, well, what if I write nonfiction? What if I write poetry? What if I write children's books? So with these kinds of things, and I added children's books because even though most of those are fiction, they're stories, we are aiming them at a problem to solve. If somebody writes inspirational guided meditation journals, we're trying to solve someone's problem and we want to focus on helping them with their problem and still fulfilling that fantasy in some way. We're saying, I use this strategy for marketing myself because obviously I have the course. I also have a few nonfiction books that I have them up on KU. I want people to access my publishing help stuff as cheaply as possible, where possible. So when I'm marketing myself, my first thing I will say is, if you need help with XYZ, and then I'll say, this is the biggest problem I see people doing. And I say that because people watching this video are going to be like, oh my God, I do that. So if you're writing a guided meditation journal on how to manifest a romantic relationship, then you might say, the biggest problem that I see women doing when they're trying to manifest a relationship is that they aren't taking care of themselves. They're not dating themselves. And then you're going to go into why you're qualified to talk about this. I am a licensed psychotherapist. I'm not the person in this hypothetical situation. I'm a licensed psychotherapist who focuses on marriage counseling and PTSD and trauma. And then you talk about the reason people do this thing. You're going to talk about, we're focusing so much on what can externally fix our problems that we refuse to look at what's inside and what, we can do to make ourselves feel better, because the more confident we are as people, the better other people will look at us and the easier it will be to draw a romantic partner. And this might sound like it's not relating to TikTok. I'm a big manifestation girly, but I've been happily married for years. But basically, the thing is, we are solving this person's problem. We're saying, here's a thing that you probably do. And TikTok is really good at sending things to people. Like they can see inside your soul. They're like, you do this. I've seen you do it somehow. So, and so we know that social media is like that. You'll be like talking to somebody. You'll be like, you was considering getting one of those bidet things on Amazon. And then that's all the ads you'll see after you have that
Happened to me the other
conversation.
day.
Exactly. So if we're saying,
Exactly.
here's a problem that I think a lot of people have, then the people who have those problems are going to see that content. And then we're not just telling them that they have the problem and I can fix it. We're saying, here's what the problem is. Here's why the problem exists, because we love to intellectualize things, especially emotions. And not just here's why you have the problem, but here's a really easy solution that you can take action on right now. Here's something you can try right now to fix it.
Right.
And that's building credibility as well. And then like with children's books, we're solving problems for parents. We're solving problems for kids. If you're a parent and your kid is struggling with being bullied, this book might help for you. Or if you're a parent with a 3-year-old who refuses to be potty trained, this is not about me, I swear.
Been there. Going through that right now, actually.
Yep. But yeah, so when it comes to like nonfiction and with children's books, we're telling them what the problem is that they're having. We're telling them why they're having the problem and what a solution is, but we're not giving them the full solution, because obviously we want them to be like, how else can I do the thing?
Right. Exactly.
So there's your answer to your question on, can I do sci-fi on TikTok?
Right. Well, and I like how you said the justice for the character, having an emotional hook, all that's universal, right? So that's even beyond outside of, or it should be. Hopefully you've written a book that has those elements in it, right? If you have, then maybe that's more about your writing style and something to look at there, I suppose. If you don't have anything compelling in your story, provided that you do, pulling those things out, because you mentioned like pulling out that specific scene. How do you identify those? Because I imagine it's a full book. There's tons of things you could have pulled. Is it a matter of just like pulling the most relatable sort of thing, or I guess even from a practical perspective, how do you sift through everything that's in there, all the things you possibly could share, find the one that's going to be the most emotionally hooking, if you will?
Okay, so I actually have like a very specific step-by-step strategy. Emma probably knows this because you've taken my course. You've seen that I also have like a separate one about how to build these hooks. But the basis of it is I want to pick scenes where my main character is made to feel alone or lonely or rejected in some way. And that might sound like, okay, well, how do you know if someone is going to even be lonely in the book? And it's not about them being dumb or about them being sitting in a room by themselves. It's about the little rejections. It's about the little fears and little insecurities that we can all relate to in some way or another. Because sure, one of the best scenes that I've ever pulled that does really, really well is about I think my first slide, because my first slide always has like an archetype and then like the big conflict of the scene. People don't need to know what the whole book is about, but they do need to know enough to understand what scene they're going into. So the best one I've ever pulled was when your billionaire best friend watches you get dumped on your birthday. Obviously, that rejection and like you're in a very low place when somebody is dumping you on your birthday. And then the scene goes on to mention that the guy brought her to a restaurant that he was getting paid to eat at because he's a restaurant reviewer. Like, he was a trash boyfriend. But basically, that's my big hack, is finding scenes where somebody feels lonely or rejected in some way. Because as humans, we've evolved over tens of thousands of years that if we're alone, we die. And sure, we live in modern society now, but 100,000 years ago, when we lived in caves and didn't have dogs yet, I don't know when dogs came about, around then-ish maybe. But the
Your dog
basis
will
of
never
it is,
reject you.
your dog won't reject. I mean, it might.
Yes.
Oh my God, that would be a life-ruining scene. Or think about the scene
I
in
know.
I Am Legend where he has to kill his own dog and he's alone. Like, that's gonna break people. Yeah, that's a horrible scene.
Goodness.
Yeah. My husband forgot that scene existed. And I was like, you don't remember? He had to kill his own dogs. He's like, the dogs are immune, right? And I was like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
But basically,
That's
like,
what made John Wick go crazy, right? Like,
exactly. They killed his dog.
That's the whole like inciting incident.
Yeah.
John Wick.
Right.
But yeah, so like hundreds of thousands of years ago, if you were kicked out of the cave, and like, let's look at this from a romance writer's perspective, writing a caveman romance. If this hunk kicked you out of the cave, you had to either find a new hunk with a new cave or get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, or, more likely die of exposure or something, or dysentery.
Yeah.
Because you don't have access to the cave and the natural spring. So we haven't been in a modern society, in an industrialized society long enough for those instincts to go away. In terms of the amount of time humans have existed, we're like right here on like the size of my whole property, which is 5 acres. And so scenes where someone is rejected hit viscerally because it's an instinctual fear that we have ingrained from hundreds of thousands of years of surviving as animals, or as animalistic as possible, before we became people with taxes. And that's also why people go so crazy when they get dumped, or when they get cheated on, or when they get rejected. It's that innate fear that we are reacting to emotionally and instinctually rather than intellectually. So, like the scene where the guy's mom died and he can't go to her funeral. He's deep down, the core emotion of that scene is that he's lonely, is that he's alone. And he doesn't have anyone there for him. Because your mom's going to be there for you. At least she should be. We all know somebody whose mom sucks, but
mine would be.
Exactly. Like, my mom, she would probably die for me, but I know she'd kill a man for me in a heartbeat.
Let's keep it family friendly.
I'm so sorry.
No, hey, my
No,
mom.
it's okay. I'm the least family friendly person, they'll tell you.
My mom would bake a pie. She wouldn't.
Yeah.
Baking pies and pulling out the rejection. I have kind of a two-part question. One, what if you're writing warmer, cozier, low angst scenes where you just don't have a lot of that going on? And two, thinking about this from like a freelance editor perspective. Because when I first started trying to get into TikTok, I realized I need to do one more final pass, either before or after I go to market, and start crafting. Because when you're thinking of in terms of hooks and whatever, and I want your thoughts on this, you start realizing, oh, I need to tweak this here. I could tweak this here to make it a really good moment. And so what is your perspective on that? First, the cozy, warm aspect, and then like editing your book so it can be more easily presented when you're doing social media.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest. I haven't read a lot of cozy like mystery, but I've read a lot of cozy romance. And even if the character isn't actively being rejected, there's always going to be a moment when they wonder how this is going to go. And that moment of wondering, of even just a little bit of panic, is plenty to use on TikTok. because we can blow up that emotion and really evaluate it under a microscope. And just don't tell us that the guy says, "Of course I love you," right after she says, "Are you into me?" We just don't tell them that in the scene, in the hook, that the guy's like, "Of course I do." We're gonna let people be like, "What does he say though?" Um,
Yeah.
because I have
Leave them
read,
on the cliff.
yes, I very recently read some novellas and shorter. I wouldn't say they're short stories. They're like novelettes or whatever, like 20,000-ish words,
Mhm.
for a client. And so there's not a lot of like back and forth, will they, won't they, because they're short. And so instead of saying, okay, well, here's this scene where this person gets dumped, or here's the third act breakup, I'm just like, here's a scene where they're talking about will they, won't they? Like, they're like, are we going to do this? And I'm just not going to tell the readers on TikTok if they will.
Right.
Because we're not giving them the satisfaction of ending that scene.
They have
Does that make sense?
actually get the book to get that satisfaction
Yes.
is the idea.
To get that
Right?
next
That's the
sentence.
whole point. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
I have one book that went, I think it got like 200,000 views on a slideshow. And the scene was that the girl is insecure because she was doing not so family friendly activities and confessed that she loved the guy. And the scene is not that. It's the day after when she's like, "You didn't say it back." And that's fine, but like, I just need to know what's happening in your brain. And basically, like, she's asking and she's really insecure about it. And his very next line is like, "Of course I love you. I've been in love with you forever." But I don't tell people that. And that went super duper viral on TikTok. And some mean person, I'm a cusser, so if you hear me pause, it's because I'm editing those out. Someone replied to every single "what did he say next" comment with his quote, and nobody bought the book. Actually, that's not true. I made $20 from a 200,000 view video.
Wow.
$20.
Because that
I've had
Don't be
and
that
that
because somebody
person.
spoiled it for everyone.
well, and then I think now that sucks. I'm sorry. But that I think really demonstrates the effectiveness of the technique,
Yes.
because the only way you're going to get that satisfaction, unless some, I'll say it, asshole, shows up in your comments and spoils it for everybody. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton
Yeah,
of
I'm
sense.
having a rage moment right now just thinking about that. Like, can we hunt them down? We can, can't we?
It reminds me of those ads for video games where they're showing you. I don't know if you guys get these ads, but I do. It's just not a video game. It's like a mobile game, and it's showing you somebody playing the game, but they're doing it really poorly, and you get like so like
Of the king.
you're not doing it right. Like, do it the right way, and that it's a little different. But yeah, it creates that, and that's what makes you download the game and play it. And the same thing, the frustration of not knowing, like, or not getting that emotional satisfaction and understanding like what's going to happen next means I have to read a book to find out what happens next. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. It makes a lot of sense. I think you've convinced me now that I need to just jump on TikTok. I'm not trying to imply that I'm being facetious. I actually do think it would be worth a shot. I'm mainly focused my previous social media attempts on YouTube. Is there some crossover there? Totally. I know different audiences, different people use TikTok than use YouTube. And so that is what it is, whatever. But I imagine there's crossover on other platforms as well. It's not like this only applies to TikTok.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of crossover. So YouTube, and also every single platform is trying to compete with TikTok by having a similar
Right.
function to TikTok. So Snapchat has their Spotlight, which is TikTok for Snapchat. Facebook and Instagram, which are owned by Meta, have Reels. YouTube has Shorts. And so you can also
Yep.
post the exact same content there and have pretty much the same or a decent chance of going viral. I've just found that the conversion rate from views to sales is significantly better with TikTok slideshows than anything else in comparison. But yeah, you can do it on any of them.
Yeah.
And what I have found with like the way that I do my hooks is that the hooks themselves, it like the strategy you're using on TikTok is, formatted in this way, or here's how you make your content and here's how you make it really appealing. But the hooks are going to be your bread and butter. The hooks are going to be the most important thing. And when you have a good hook that has that emotional connection, you can swap that over to Facebook ads. You can swap that to Instagram ads. You can swap that to Google ads. You can make that your little Amazon blurb if you shorten it down to half a sentence, because we know they give you like 5 characters total to write a
Right.
appealing sentence about the book. And so it's very much not just a TikTok thing. That's why I say it's like, I don't just
Yeah.
teach people how to TikTok. I secretly teach you how to market.
Right. So for
Um,
those who don't know, can you tell the audience, like, because you mentioned like a TikTok slideshow and there's YouTube Shorts and Reels, that sort of thing, right? Different platforms that some people might not be familiar with. Can you just tell us, like, what is it? What is a TikTok slideshow for those who don't know?
Okay, so TikTok, everybody knows, has people singing and dancing. First off, I need everybody to know you don't have to show your face to be very successful on TikTok. You
That's
can
good
make
for me,
hundreds of
right?
thousands of dollars on TikTok. I don't see the problem. I've seen lots of people who have much bigger beards than you do really well, but they also talk
Oh,
about
well,
their
see,
beards.
maybe that's it. Is it's just not big
You need
enough,
a
right?
longer
It
beard.
cuts off right.
You need to go full
Yes.
Gandalf.
I am competing with Damon Courtney, or the founder of BookFunnel, all the time. Like, can I get his, but I just can't compete. For whatever reason, it
but
doesn't want to grow much longer than this. Anyway, go on.
But yeah, so TikTok added a slideshow function towards the end of 2022 that is basically where it's, instead of being video, it's photo slides. And so the way that I do those is I make them in Canva, download them, post them on TikTok, and I do 25 to 35 images. It's all the same background image, and the text is the only thing that changes. One sentence, maybe even half a sentence at a time for people to slide through, because people can move through it at their own pace versus the video format where it's based off of how long somebody made it.
Uh-huh.
So if it's a video, then somebody might have made a slide that's like, this wall of text, and they might have made it 3 seconds and impossible to read. Or they might have every single one that's like 2 or 3 words and it's 5 seconds. And it's like, I just want to keep passing it. The reason that slideshow function works is because people can go through it at their own pace. Slow readers can go through it slow.
Yeah.
Fast readers can go through it fast. And it also, part of the reason I really like it is because it gets people into reading mode, is what I call it. I don't know what the
Right.
psychological term is, but when they're reading 25 to 35 slides, they're reading the scene from the book at a
Right.
good pace, and they're turning the page like they would on a Kindle or like on the Kindle app on their phone.
Right.
And so they're kind
They're
of getting into that
actively
mode of
doing that.
I'm
Yeah.
reading the story. And there's a very specific book talk audience for those slideshows as well. So people who generally watch those have a much higher chance of going and downloading the book, whether it's on KU or wide. Because Kelli, you mentioned that you're wide, right?
I am.
So somebody before it was Author Nation at 20 books in last year, somebody was like, well, does this even work for wide authors? And I was about to be like, well, here's why it does. Psychology of marketing, blah, blah, blah. Because people are emotionally invested in the characters, they're more likely to spend money to get the dang book.
Yeah.
But somebody at 20 Books Vegas last year asked me that question, and I was about to answer, and I got a message on my phone where somebody was like, oh my God, I'm wide, and I had my first $1,000 day, and it was just my Amazon sales were at $1,000, and then there were more sales across all my other platforms. And so
Nice.
like this, because you're emotionally connecting people in a way that's really easy to process.
Yeah, and the format of those slideshows, to me, because like you're saying, they're already reading the book and they don't even know it, right?
Pretty
They're
much,
doing
yeah.
the exact thing that you want them to do, as opposed to like passively scrolling on their phone. Like when I'm watching YouTube Shorts, I'm like scrolling to the next video. It's like, and if I can tell like immediately, I'm not going to watch that. I'm going to scroll on to the next thing right away. But even when I do watch something, I'm passively consuming it as opposed to actively
Yes.
consuming it. And so I think there is a big difference there, and I can see how that affects the conversion. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and you
Because
also,
if they're already doing the thing, yeah.
yes, but something I always tell people, because I have seen people who will tell people, well, just do like scenes from your book, but just do screenshots from the Kindle, and it's like a wall of text in 12-point font. And I'm like, part of the reason that I don't do that is because people get put off when they see a wall of text, and they are significantly more likely to scroll. When the next slide is like 7 to 10 words, then it doesn't feel like a chore when you are on an app where the format is short form. It feels like you're continuing to scroll. You're not getting stuck on something that you might not be interested in. You're still giving it that, 1 or 2 second chance that you would give any other piece of content. It just happens that you're giving that 1 or 2 second chance on each slide of a 35 slide slideshow.
Yeah.
And then you get 60 seconds of watch time just because people are like, yeah, I'll give it a chance. Yeah, I'll give it a chance. Yeah, I'll give it a chance.
Right.
Because they get to continue to scroll as well.
Right.
So do you find that, like, a while back I was doing TikTok, and one of the big things that they said was if you make your video in another app, or like I was using CapCut and that sort of thing, but you want the words to come onto the page from the TikTok creator. Do you find that to be true, or can you create everything in Canva and then transfer it into the TikTok app? And will it have the same turnaround? Because I know the algorithm, and maybe it's just what it is today, but I know that there was definitely people that were seeing a much greater success if they were actually inputting the verbiage of their hooks and stuff within the TikTok creator. So what are your thoughts on that?
So there are a couple of reasons that I don't make all of my stuff in TikTok. There are 2 big reasons. The first and really big one, I told y'all right at the beginning, I'm lazy. I don't want to sit here and do this all day. And when I have to copy and paste a new piece of text for every single slide of a 35 slideshow, and I want to post that 3 times a day for a month, and I don't want to come back to this later. So I'm posting all 90 posts in one day. I'm just going to pass away. I'm going to pass away from boredom if I have to sit and do that. So
we don't want that.
Yeah, so that's the one thing. Basically, if I had to go in and do it individually, I wouldn't. My brain would not allow it. And so getting it done is more important than anything else. The second thing, and the second reason that I use Canva for everything. I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I drag and drop it into Canva and use their features to do it because I don't want to do all of the work. So the second reason that I don't use the inputting the text on TikTok method is if you're writing good hooks, it's not going to make as significant of a difference as people think, because TikTok's main algorithm is based off of the number of seconds that somebody is on your video. They are going to favor things made with TikTok slightly. But that means if you make a piece of content badly, if there's something that could potentially flag their bots, or the image is a little bit pixelated, then that video is going to make, say, 700 views or 1,000 views instead of 400 or 500 views. But my goal isn't to make 600 views instead of 300. My goal is to have every video make over 1,000 views and have at least 1 or 2 pieces go viral per month. That's how I make $3,000 a book from my TikTok exclusively. I only advertise my books on TikTok. I don't post them elsewhere, and I don't have ad spend.
Thank you so much for saying that too, because I actually got stalled out in one of those moments where you're like, I don't want to face reality, because I had started doing them in Canva because I would craft my hooks in Notion all nice and organized so I could keep track of what I was doing, and then put them in Canva, and I'm like, wait a minute, am I supposed to be texting the input in TikTok? I'm like, I can't see myself doing that for like 2 35 slideshows every day. So thank you. And follow-up question. The Lazy Author's Guide to these slideshows. If you only have, like me, 20 minutes a day, is something better than nothing? Just what are your thoughts on just doing what you can do, or do you really need to have a plan to just, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I know exactly what you're asking. Yes. So, I hate working. I hate it. I hate doing my own job. I'm so passionate about helping people make money, and I love writing and I love doing art. But if I had to do this for like 5 hours a day, I would lose my mind. So, and I was actually gonna mention this with Kelly's question as well. Draft my posts for a month. I draft 1 month's worth of posts. I pick 2 days when I have nothing going on. I put on Parks and Recreation or Superstore. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't watch The Office. I can't stand Michael Scott. I'm sorry. But
I get
put
it.
on a
Oh
show.
no.
I love
I watch more
Parks and Rec
TV
though.
than anybody I know. I swear, I've watched Parks and Recreation, episode 1 to the end of the show at season 7. I've watched the whole show all the way through probably 20 times in my life since 2015.
Yeah.
I watch more TV than anyone I know because I will sit and while I have the TV going, I have my phone and I'm like, oh my God, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And I will draft my posts and I will do the Canva post on the computer. Once I'm done with that, I pull up the phone, download all of them from Canva. And as soon as I download one, I delete it from my Canva folder because I'm not reusing the same background image slide combo. Because the metadata will mess up your TikTok algorithm. TikTok's going to be like, why are you just posting the same thing over and over again? When it has different metadata, TikTok prefers it. But I will download, I swear, 90 pieces of content because I post 3 times a day. The most important thing, though, is post minimum once a day. Because if not, TikTok is going to be like, this person doesn't care about us. She doesn't love us. TikTok is like a really needy, toxic boyfriend. So if
But that's
you
good data. You're saying you take 2 days a month and you just batch content. See, that's
Yeah.
a question I could never really get hard data on. Like, if I was going to sit down and I need to know, like, how much time do I need to sit down and then just get this shit, just get this over with.
get these darn things done. Language, Emma, family
2 days.
friendly.
Okay.
And
Y'all had no idea.
Now's the word
Oh,
cut. The word cut, so Jack knows where to
yeah,
go.
Okay, yeah, we got to scrap the whole podcast and start over. Oh my gosh.
all right,
Oh,
those are
Emma.
the
No, it's
flowers,
fine.
everybody.
We are all adults here. It's fine. People swear.
I'm actually 12. Gibbity. Gibbity, raise Ohio.
Is that 2 I'm like a dog with a bone because I need this data. Is that 2 days just crafting the videos after you've already extracted the hooks? Because like when I did my first slideshow the other day, I think it took me all day. Of course, I work at BookFunnel and I'm doing other stuff publishing, but it took me literally all day to read and go through the first 2 chapters of the book I was working on and extract and then convert it to second person and then check to make sure the sentence is hooky. So is that included in the 2 days? Please tell me this.
Unfortunately, pulling hooks is not included in the 2 days, but I've been using the same hooks for 2 years. I don't rewrite my hooks.
So like once
I
you
need to
have
pull
them,
new hooks
yeah.
and redo them because I've refined my method a lot for like these couple of books. But like this book, the hooks that I pulled are perfect and I'm never going to change them. I pulled 18 hooks for this book. It took me, because I had already written it, so I knew the story. I skimmed through it, pulled the things that would work for hooks. I pulled 18. When I do for clients, I pull like 10. But I pulled 18, posted those for a month, input them into my analytics spreadsheet that I made. Actually, I paid someone to make it for me. So I input them into this really complex analytics spreadsheet I had, and then it made me a nice little friendly bar chart that was like, here's the views and the favorites and the likes on this one. Because favorites, just like a fun little throw in there, favorites are the best determiner for whether or not it's going to sales, because likes, people just like casually like pretty much anything. But if they click the favorites button, which is like the little bookmark icon on TikTok, that means they want to watch it later. They're saving it for later. So favorites, top determiner for sales for any type of content you're making. So it takes me 1 to 2 days to pull hooks, depending on how much mental energy I have and how long the book is. And I do this for clients as well. So I've got a pretty good idea of it. For a book that's about 100 20,000 words, which is pretty sizable for anybody who's ever had to write a book that long. So a book that's 120,000 words takes me about 2 days to pull all the hooks. It might take you longer because you haven't practiced. But basically,
That's not too bad.
Yeah, but instead of like going through and then like highlighting and then copying and then writing it out as a hook and like formatting it as a hook and doing all that, I go through the book, highlight a bunch of things. I use the Kindle highlight feature, and then I email those highlights to myself so I can just copy and paste them into Microsoft Word, get them formatted, copy them over to an Excel sheet. And I do it in Word because it's a lot easier to like do the next line thing, because then once it's on a new line, when you copy and paste, so each line is a box on Excel. And that's really good for Canva because it makes your life easier. But it's about 2 days for hooks from a book. And if you have a sizable backlist, that's a big undertaking. I have 24 books out.
Yeah.
But
But
I
with
only
new
pull
releases,
hooks
this
from...
could be part of your process, I imagine. Because like
Exactly.
me, with a new release, I do my final read in Kindle and I'm highlighting anything I want to tweak real quick anyway. So I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
can just really make that part of,
Mhm.
that's doable.
Yep. And I would
Like, 'cause,
highlight
yeah, I'm working
about
girl, lazy.
300 to 500 words at a time so that you make sure that you have enough slides, because you're
Okay.
going to have to cut some things out of it, but I average about 10 words per slide.
And just to reiterate, you said you can reuse the hooks, but when you reuse them, do it with a different background image.
With a different background. Yes. So what I will
Okay,
do when I
okay.
make
Yeah.
them in Canva so that I have like a month's worth of content, I will take each of my hooks. This book I have 10 hooks for that I use consistently because those are the ones that perform and get me sales. I've cut at this point I've cut 8 hooks from it because there were 8 hooks that just were consistently underperforming, were consistently not getting sales. I love my analytics spreadsheet so much because I didn't have to like scroll and be like, well, this one this time. Now let me see all the other times I've posted it and see how it did those times. Instead, I just input the data for a month into my spreadsheet. It took me about 30 minutes to an hour. And then I was like, all right, these are the ones I'm deleting. Buy hooks. So I will take those. I will have one hook selected on Canva, have the background image, have it all set up, click format or click the export button. It pulls up a new one, go back to that original file, throw a new background image on, export, repeat. Just repeat the process back on that original file. And I do that. 10 hooks I'll do 3 times per hook. No.
So
3
it's a
hooks I
lot
will
of
do
work up front
9 times.
maybe, but once you get into
Yeah.
that process, the work is going to even out over time.
Yes, but
Okay.
the big thing is that if you draft all of your posts, so you've got a month's worth of posts, whether that's 30 to do once a day or 60 to do twice a day or 90 to do 3 times a day, I would not go over 3 times a day for this format. But if you're doing like up to 90, it takes you 2 days to draft. But then when you go to post, you are sitting and eating your breakfast or drinking your coffee or procrastinating that blank page in front of you. I'm a writer too. I know these things. I know how we do it.
Yeah.
I have a book outline that I need to finish this week. Instead, I'm going to scroll through TikTok. Well, instead of just scrolling through TikTok, why don't you click post on one of those drafts real quick and then scroll through TikTok, make sure that all of your videos are book talk related, and then once your phone vibrates to indicate that that video has been posted, put your phone down and write your book. It takes 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you write to market or do you market to write?
I write to the universal fantasy and I write to market. I don't write to trend.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think that writing to trend is a really good way to burn out because I used to write really, really quickly and write a lot of books very quickly. But between publishing my previous book and this book right here was 1 year, which is the longest I had ever gone between publishing books. And it was so freeing to just be able to do kind of what I wanted for a year and not have to worry about writing to a trend and having a book out before the trend died.
Yeah.
So I write to market, and I use, like I've said before, I use T. Taylor's Universal Fantasy Guide because that's how you're going to see, like, these are things that consistently sell and that consistently do well. The reason that 50 Shades of Grey does so well, despite the fact that so many people have very strong negative feelings about it, is because of the universal fantasy. She's a normal girl who works at a hardware store, and now suddenly she's dating a billionaire who takes her in a helicopter on dates, and happens to
Wish that would
want
happen
her
to me.
join this new world, spicy things that he wants to do. Jack, you can find your billionaire man to take you on helicopter dates.
Oh,
I
yeah.
promise
Yeah.
you. He's there.
Yep.
He's out
He's
there.
out there.
He's out there. I know.
But yeah, so
I'm
the
not poking. I'm
reason,
not trying to poke fun. Sorry.
so, but yeah, so like universal I live and die by universal fantasy at this point. I won't write a book without
I'm just gonna show this.
without consulting universal fantasy. Yes, show it off. And
This is the
Not
romance
sponsored, by the
one.
way. This is not
Not sponsored. Nope, I had this book.
A concept. Have you ever tested a premise on TikTok or social media first before writing the book?
No, because I don't want to. Um, but also because at this point I know what does really well and I know what I like to write.
Gotcha.
So, and I really just like, as long as it follows universal fantasy and as long as I can just kind of sprinkle that in throughout, I know the book is going to sell. And bonus, if you are actively writing and thinking about universal fantasy, you can use that universal fantasy and those universal fantasies for your hooks instead of saying, for example, I'm writing a book based off of a sport that I do. I'm a horse girl. I painted my horse that I own. This is a painting I painted of my horse that I own. I do a sport called reining, and I'm writing a series about reining. And instead of saying when the cowboy holds your hand after you got hurt riding, it's when the billionaire cowboy holds your hand. Because we know, based off of the trope of billionaire, we know for a fact that he's the one that she's into. I don't have to clarify to people that, like, when I say billionaire cowboy or your ex, we know it's going to be the billionaire cowboy. Or in one example, it's when the famous hockey player sees you at a game with your boyfriend. We know that the boyfriend is not going to matter that much in this book. And that's a real example from a client that I was helping with. So thinking about that universal fantasy is also going to help you write your hooks, because you can be like, okay, so not only am I appealing to people's emotions and their fear of loneliness, I'm also using the universal fantasy for that first slide so that I know people will be interested. Somebody did an analysis on Fourth Wing, the wildly popular Dragon Rider Academy romantasy book, that like people were like, oh yeah, it's just another Academy book or whatever. But somebody did an analysis on it, and there were 30 universal fantasies in chapter 1. Universal fantasy was applied 30 times in chapter 1, and people wonder why the book is popular. Universal fantasy, live and die by it. And that is what I write by. I don't write to trend. And when I write to market, it's writing to that universal fantasy. It's not writing to, I need to write this very specific kind of book based off of what's popular right now. I need to write a book that people are going to fantasize about them being the main character of.
But I imagine, like you said, over time, once you have quite a catalog of the videos up, you'll start to see trends in what the readers are responding to. And that could be like really good data.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what, when I say like, these are like, because I used to say, when I started teaching this stuff, I used to say, use emotional hooks, don't use spicy scenes. And when people are like, what emotions? I'd be like, let's appeal to anger and sadness and confusion.
Loneliness.
Were the big ones.
Confusion. Okay.
And I was like, these are what you need to appeal to, because these are strong emotions people will feel. And since then, I have shifted towards saying, find a way to appeal to loneliness. If the scene can appeal to loneliness in some way, the fear of being alone or the fear of rejection, if it can appeal to that in some way, shape, or form, you're set. And that's because I have been testing this for 2 years now, constantly. I've been testing it on my own books. I've been writing hooks for other authors for 2 years. I have been analyzing the data and analyzing what sells, and it's what it is.
Now,
just if you can
does
appeal to
it
that.
matter if it's the heroine's confusion, or because it's not all male female, but whose confusion? The main POV character or the love interest? Does it matter?
It can be either one. One
Or
of my
loneliness,
best
I meant,
scenes,
not confusion.
yes,
Loneliness.
one of my best scenes that works for my really, really smutty werewolf book is actually where our main heroine is dumping the guy. And he is quite literally a sad puppy standing out in the rain. And people are like, oh, my poor boy. Even though I always, when I write my hooks, I use second person POV. It doesn't matter if it's like past tense or present tense or whatever, but I always use second person POV because people react a lot more strongly when the hook is when the billionaire bad boy dumps you in front of his friends versus when the billionaire bad boy dumps her in front of his friends. We're like, well, why should we care about her? Maybe she sucks. But we care a lot when he's dumping us. I want my billionaire bad boy. So I like using that second person POV as well. But to answer the question on loneliness, as long as it's loneliness of a character that we can care about, it doesn't super matter. Because like I said, I just pulled hooks for a sci-fi book and it had like 3 POV characters, I want to say. It was all third person except for one character because that character was doing like a log. They were logging their stuff because one of them was the android's POV. So it was his log. And then the others were third person POV. And it didn't really matter as long as one of the characters that was a protagonist in some way was feeling lonely or fear of rejection or something.
Right. Right.
So I had a question about the second person because that was the you actually answered the question because I had noticed that a lot of these are in second person, and I was wondering if there's ever any time that you would see where the third person would work. So it totally just answered my question. So my next question is, do you have like when you're talking about your slideshow? We've talked a lot about the verbiage and the universal fantasy, but what sort of images do you use? And do you use a single image for the slideshow for like the single 35 piece slideshow, or do you use a different image throughout that, where as you flip the page, it's a different image with different words as they flip, they're seeing different images, or is it just one? You don't have to go find 35 images?
Yeah, absolutely. I use the exact same image for the background on each one, especially because Canva has this feature where you like make one image with one background and then put text over, and then it'll fill in the text for each slide with the same background image for you. It's really great. So I do that. And for type of images, I could just tell you I use images of neutral backgrounds, like the woods or a building or something that's like the scene, and I don't use people. But I'm going to go a little deeper than that because we like deep answers here. TikTok has had a problem in the past, and all social media has had this problem in some way, shape, or form. There are people who will take screenshots of adult videos, adult entertainment videos of people in compromising positions. They will edit the heck out of them or just put them in black and white, but they will up the contrast, put it in black and white, and post it on social media for anyone to see, including 12-year-olds who are not supposed to be on these apps. So, because this is a thing that happens, TikTok's bots don't just search for these images, they also search for images with people in them because they're not totally sure.
Right.
Especially still images. I need to clarify this is especially with these still images because people do the screenshots and then strongly edit. It's less common with videos and it's a lot more detectable because of certain something data from the recording or something. I don't know how the tech works.
Okay.
I just know that it's a thing. But with still images, it's a lot harder to detect. And so anything with people in it, if they see a hand or a face, then for the sake of the app, because we all know that, there's been so many things with Congress trying to ban TikTok, and their big excuse is they're posting inappropriate content for the children. That's why I don't post spicy scenes. And it's why I don't have people in the background, because when TikTok detects these types of scenes or these types of images, they don't necessarily give you an immediate content guideline violation if they can't be sure that it's bad content, if the bots are not sure. Instead, they will give you low views because you can't fight low views. You can't argue against low views. You can argue against a content guidelines violation and then a person has to look at it and it costs TikTok money. It doesn't cost them any money to just not give you views if their bot detects some sort of potentially hazardous but not confirmed to be hazardous content. Which is why I'm so careful about my content. I will use a picture of the woods or a road if the characters are on a road trip. I don't use a picture of the person driving the car. I'll use a picture from a private jet or from the interior of a private jet, but not if there's a person sitting there. I'll do a picture of somebody riding a horse, but I'm not going to have their hands holding the reins. I'm going to have, because like I said, I have a book about reining that's got a billionaire cowboy, and I'm not going to use the hands holding the reins or the person's face. I'm going to have their cowboy boot along the side of the horse. I'm not going to have a picture, I'm especially not going to have a picture, I should say, of a girl lying in bed with a sheet over her. My God, TikTok would have a field day with that. The app, not the people on the app. So I'm very, very picky about my images not having people in them. Otherwise, I'm not very picky about my images because I need to make 90 posts in as quick as I can because I don't want to be here longer than I have to. I don't want to be sitting on Canva all day. So I'm not super picky otherwise, but they cannot have people in them. They can't have a statue that is shaped like a person. They can't have the curve of a woman's neck, but her face isn't in it. And like it's just from like here to here. It can't have that because TikTok is going to be like, that could be a nude body and that's a problem. So
that makes sense. I didn't even think about like not putting people in because I would have, it's romance. There would be like a couple or,
right.
But it's understanding like, no, you can't put them in there because the bots aren't able to distinguish between inappropriate nude bodies and just two people sitting there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never even thought about that.
Are like, why isn't my content working? I do everything you say. And then there are shirtless men plastered all over the account. I'm like, do you? Do you do everything I say?
So if you have that content, if that's a past content for your account, should you remove that before you start implementing some of these
old content? But if you delete a bunch of old content at once, I would not immediately start posting. I would engage meaningfully with other book talk content for a couple of days, for 10 minutes a day tops, a couple of days before you start posting. I actually have found a pattern where people will get an unoriginal content warning and be like, this can't be shown on the FYP because it's unoriginal content. Because they're posting slideshows, but they're not interacting with book talk at all. And people were like, well, it's because I'm posting slideshows and I'm using the same hook over and over again. But the real reason TikTok does it is because there are content farms, not just for book talk, but all sorts of different industries that will just post and post and post this stuff and not interact at all other than potentially optimizing an account to be book talk related, which means watching book talk only content and posting book talk only stuff and using book talk only hashtags, etc. So there will be accounts on these farms, content farms, where technically real people are posting them, but they're sitting and posting, setting it down, grabbing another phone, posting, setting it down, grabbing another phone, posting, setting it down. And then once they run out of their stack of 10 phones, they'll move the stack back over and then post on a different account on this phone, move it over, post on a different account on this phone. So what I always tell people is if you're getting those like ineligible for FYP things, stop posting for a couple days, but don't stop using the account. Use the account to interact with people 10, 20 minutes a day for a couple of days. And then from then on, what you should always be doing is when you hit post and that video is uploading, scroll on Book Talk, like a couple of videos, maybe comment something more than one word on one video, and it's going to help TikTok see that you're a person because even people who post for a living and like those big influencer accounts and comedy accounts, Like, what's that couple that always plays pranks on each other? The one girl has like really curly hair, and then the guy looks like very skinny and like I can't think of their names. My
I don't
husband
know
loves
them.
their account, but like even they like they're probably scrolling and watching other people make funny videos when they're not posting videos.
Mhm.
And so you want to make sure that you're behaving like a real person so that TikTok thinks you're a real person.
Okay, so I had a question about Canva because I just pulled it up on my other screen here, and there's several TikTok photo modes. Do you have a preference of which one works the best for you? There's like the 1080, 1920, like that sort of thing, or does it matter?
I just use the 1080 1920 size.
Okay.
As long as it's the vertical 1080 1920. I don't even look for like TikTok. I just use their mobile presentation first thing that's like on their drop down list when you select to start. And I've actually also stopped using the desktop app. I use a Mac, so they have a desktop app. I just use Canva on my browser because the desktop app, when they did their big glow up that I despise more than anything in the world, it
Me
started doing
too.
this thing where if you exported your bulk stuff, it would close your original tab every time. And then you would have to go in and reopen that base document. And it made me very, very mad. But it doesn't do that when you use the website. And the one thing it does is it'll open and be like, do you want to use the desktop app? And then you click no, but you can turn the setting off where it's like only open these in the browser. Stop asking me about the desktop app.
That's good. So you're talking, I think, too, about you have your hooks on, say, an Excel sheet. Did you say that you can upload that, or are you just copying and pasting your
You can
verbiage
upload it
onto
directly into Canva. Canva has a function called bulk create that is absolutely magical.
bulk create?
Honestly,
Okay, I'm going to
like,
write that down.
it saves me so much time.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's basically taking, if you have a spreadsheet and each column of that spreadsheet has like one slide's worth of text, you're uploading that, and then it's taking that text and putting each one of those
Yes,
onto
so
one of those slides. The idea for people
yes,
who are like
exactly.
trying to visualize it, right?
Yes, and when you do your Excel file, make sure that row 1, so that top row all the way across, is like either blank or like the title of the hook, because Canva won't generate an image for row 1. It goes from row 2 on, and the maximum number of slides you can do on TikTok is 35 slides. So make sure that your hooks, i.e. your script on Canva or on your Excel sheet, don't go past row 36, because rows 2 through 36 are going to be the ones that it uses to
Now, do you
generate.
show this process in your course? Because I'm on
Yes, it's
lesson
an
focusing on
extremely
emotion, but
yes, it's an extremely detailed, like I walk you exactly through it. I think one thing I forget to mention in the course is literally just like once you've generated that, go back and click your original tab and do it again with a different image. Because I have had some people confused on that. I'm like, I forgot to explain that, and I should have explained it because I want everything to be very beginner friendly. I don't want it to be like, okay, so obviously you know what Canva is. Here's how you do this with this thing that already exists that everyone knows about in Canva, because I don't know what you don't know, so I want it to be easy.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
I think our question was about devices next.
sorry,
Oh,
what
I
was
think
that?
you had that question.
oh yeah, question about dedicated devices. I've heard, and maybe you can confirm or deny, that you can have up to 5 accounts on one device, but we've been kind of throwing around the idea of getting into TikTok for different genres and really being guinea pigs to test it out for authors who are new to it. And we were wondering, like, do we need to go and each of us get a separate device from the current devices we have? Like, I have my Android. Do I
Right.
need to go get like another one for all the other accounts I'm going to test out with? Or
Right. So the first piece of information was mostly false. You cannot have 5 accounts on one device. You can have 8. You can have 8
Okay.
accounts on one device. So I have used up to 8 accounts per device before. You don't have to run that many. You really don't. My $3,000 a month for this one book is literally from one account. Like if you want to do like an account for each series or for each genre at least, that's a pretty decent idea. Like if you have like super dark, hardcore, heavy trigger warning romance, and then you're also posting like sweet no spice romance on a different account, I would do different accounts for those. But if you have like a dark romance, but then you also have like a dark RH romance or something, or like a dark fantasy romance and a dark contemporary, those can go on the same account. It's just about like the darkness and spice levels that I would keep on the same, or like on different accounts. But basically, as far as different devices go, for one, I highly recommend using Apple devices, not because of TikTok, but because when you are downloading, the numbering system works differently based off of how Canva labels each slide. When you download them on an Android, here's how an Android orders them. Slide number 1, slide number 12, or slide number 1, slide number 10, 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, or 19, slide number 2, slide number 20, and it's 20. A nightmare. So if you can access like a cheap Wi-Fi only iPhone that's like 6 years old, that's fine. Mine is an iPhone, my like bonus device when I'm feeling like not just using my phone, when I want to have extra accounts. My bonus device is like my old phone that I like stopped using because I got a new phone. It's an iPhone XR and it still works fine. You don't have to have like the newest iPhone. I've also, in the past, I bought one off of somebody off of Facebook Marketplace. I met them in a casino parking lot by myself on a rainy day and got their phone.
Sounds like a
hitchhiker romance or something, girl.
Or
I was thinking a different genre, but yeah.
A dark stalker or captive romance, like
still romance though, Jack. Kidnappers can be romantic, right?
You're gonna have to do some convincing for me on that one, but okay.
And he's hot, and he like is so into you that he kidnapped you. He's risking getting arrested. This works really well for very specific for romance, not for real life. Honestly, even in my contemporary romance, if a guy said half of these things to me in real life, I would be like, no.
Yeah.
Red flag, red flag.
Like a standard contempt.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, just
a
the
lot
set
of
to relate it
psychology
to science fiction. To science fiction, I really would not like to be out there in space, like fighting aliens, and that would be freaking terrifying too. So no,
yes.
I can relate to that. It's different, but
yeah.
you know, you put yourself in that scenario, and it's actually like, maybe not for real.
Well, like half the people who read like Jack Reacher would like cry if they got in a bar fight. So, you know, like
but that's that
one guy punches them in the
grabbing a device. If I'm on eBay grabbing a device, is there like an operating system or something?
I would just do
Emma gets focused on something. She's like,
you are good. I would just do an iPhone that's like I would do an iPhone that's like less than 5 years old, because if they get too old, then the operating systems might not be compatible with the newer apps. But generally within 5 years is pretty safe. If you get one that's older, just kind of like keep an eye on if it'll keep being compatible with the things. I just realized that the phone I have right now is almost 3 years old. It's elderly.
Okay,
it's
but that's good to know
phone.
for like the average offer. Like you have your device and then maybe a secondary iPhone, but you don't need to have like a box of devices.
Yeah, and I do need to note as well, it can be a pain with Android, but like the algorithm isn't going to screw you over if you have an Android. Right? Like the algorithm is fine with it. And there's a way around that numbering order thing where instead of downloading them as like photos from Canva, if you just download them, or if you renumber them on Canva, that can work. Like if you rename each slide, that can work, but it takes a lot of time. It takes longer than an iPhone automatically numbering it right to do this. But what I found works for a lot of people with Androids is if you just download it as a video and then screenshot each slide and then delete the video, you're going to have the slides still, but they're going to be in order, because they're going to be in order of when you screenshotted them. not of their download number.
Right.
Girl, I'm not
So I
doing
do
all
need
that. I'm just gonna go get an iPhone.
Yes,
Right.
I just want to make it clear to people who are listening who might not have the means to just go out and buy a new
Sure.
device that is like, it's not the end of the world if you don't have an iPhone.
Right.
Especially because I know a lot of people
Along
are like,
those
I
same
hate iPhone.
along those same lines, because the number of accounts per device, that came up, and then like this dedicated device question. What are some other like maybe common, I don't know if you want to call them myths or whatever, that you hear from authors, like the things that have been told about TikTok, like don't do this, or like what you mentioned about like why you don't put people or images of people in the images that you use for that reason, whereas a lot of authors might not have even known that. Like what are some of the things that, I guess on both sides of that coin, that they've heard, and maybe it's just a misconception, or it's blown out of the water, or maybe it's just an outright untruth. And then also maybe what are a couple other things that are just actually things you should pay attention to or
Right.
not do or avoid, that then people just don't know about, or it's like a secret and the people that know, and that sort of thing. Like,
Right.
fill us in.
So the absolute biggest thing, and I still see this at least once or twice a week when I'm doing account audit, or when somebody's saying, hey, I'm a TikTok PA and I pull scenes for people, and for some reason I'm struggling when I'm posting, and then I'll go look, and we've all heard the term, and I'm sorry, this is not as family friendly, we've all heard the term sex sells. And some people, and this worked really well, posting just your weirdest, dirtiest scenes on TikTok worked just fine in 2021 and 2022. And then Congress tried to ban TikTok and then kept trying to ban it several times. So TikTok was like, okay, we're gonna really crack down on that spice. So the biggest thing, and I still see people doing it, and I see people with big names recommending it, or who have these factories who are like, pull hooks for you for clients and run ads and do all of this, and they're still pulling spicy scenes. And that's the biggest thing I see, is that there are people who will make a living pulling spicy scenes, but spicy scenes are more likely to get your account banned. They are less likely to sell books, and they can cause you to lose royalties if you're on Kindle Unlimited, because when you're posting a spicy scene, people are going to, and this happens all the time, it is a constant thing. If this happens to go viral because TikTok didn't catch it and people viewed it, when a lot of people are going to go buy this book, a very massive number of the people are going to be like, I downloaded this because of this spicy scene. So I'm going to go read that spicy scene for personal reasons, and then I'm going to return the book. So you have somebody going, and this scene could be towards the end of the book, it could be towards the middle. So you see Kindle seeing hundreds of people downloading the book, skipping 100 pages, and then skipping to the end because the people are like, yeah, that'll get them their thing, or I can review it, or whatever. And so they'll skip to that, then they'll skip to the end, and they'll return the book. And they're like, oh,
Right.
you're scamming people. You are, or you're running a scam on us. You're having people do fake page reads because you're trying to get people to skip forward and do this. And it can have, and when they do this, I don't know if they still do this, but rather than being like, we're going to evaluate every single person who downloads the book on KU and sees if they have real reading activity, instead of doing that, they just reduce your royalties by 50% for the month. Could you imagine
I've seen that happen.
if you worked your booty off to get, say, $10,000 in a month on your Kindle reads, and Amazon said, a lot of people just kept skipping to this one spicy scene and then left.
Yeah.
So because of that, because this happened for a week or something out of that $10,000 month, we're going to give you $5,000 instead. Could you imagine?
Yoink. Yeah.
I've seen that happen actually with especially a lot of romance authors that have high page reads. Like they're getting tons of page reads, and they'll be like, oh, we evaluated your account and decided, no, we're not, that some of these may not have been legitimate. They're not going to close your account, but they are going to limit how much money that Kindle Unlimited pays you.
And what
and that's
happens is
like,
you can fight this, but how much money does an attorney cost? How much time and effort do you
Yeah.
have to fight this? How much do you have a disability that prevents you from calling and harassing Amazon about this until they finally get sick of you and give in? Like, do
Yeah.
you have the time, energy, and resources to deal with it? And so when I say, like, don't post spicy scenes, and people say, I did everything right, except I posted spicy scenes, and then they complain
Yeah.
to me about why
Yeah.
it's not working, I say, it's because you're posting spicy scenes. So that is the
Right.
number one thing that I see, and I see it all the time, and I still see it, and I still see people who are making a living doing this for people, and they're like, yeah, I'll just do the spicy scenes. It's the easiest way. But it's also the easiest way to get your
Right.
account banned or to get your phone or your IP address banned.
Right. So those
Um,
spicy hooks might be really effective, but you're essentially promoting like short-term thinking, I guess, so to
yes.
speak, right? As opposed to, like you said, like trying to pull loneliness specifically, that emotional
Mhm.
hook. That's something that's going to get somebody more invested for the whole story as opposed to just that one little snippet
Exactly.
that was spicy. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
When
the
you get
spicy stuff is
somebody,
still there, but yeah.
yes, yes, and the spicy stuff might not be there. And that's also another misconception is
Right.
my books have to be ridiculously dark and spicy and super messed up in order for people to read it. That's the only thing that works on TikTok. I've heard so many people tell me with so many different things, that's the only thing that works on TikTok, and it drives me bonkers. I've had people say, only KU books work on TikTok, though, and they'll argue with me about it. And I'll say, but I have, it's a lower number, but I've had dozens of authors say, I make a full-time living now being wide, or I
Hmm.
make a full-time living just with TikTok Shop now because of the types of hooks that you had me pull. Or I have had somebody tell me, well, this only works for white women who write heterosexual books. And I'm like, my absolute number one person who has promoted it, which her books were straight romances, but she is a Black woman who writes interracial romances. And so people will say, well, this only works for this one specific thing. And they'll give me a different specific thing every time. But they'll say this only works for this one specific situation. And I'm like, it doesn't. The
Yeah.
problem is a lot of the people who do the marketing or who run agencies based off of this will have a very strict limit on who they accept so that they can have proven results with the easiest method, with the most obvious, quick to go to method. Because obviously, me telling you, hey, pick a scene where a character is lonely or picking a scene that focuses on emotion and here's all of the detail on how to do this, it's a much more, you have to exercise your brain a lot more to do that than you do to say, this scene has some weird spice in it and just pull that. It's
Yeah.
more effort. It's more difficult to train in a PA. It takes more time. But in the long term, you're going to see a lot more gains from it. You're also
This is
going
making me
to,
think about my Jane Austen pen because I never thought I also write sweet Jane Austen romance, and I never thought of that as a niche that could work on TikTok. And I'm starting to
Mhm.
think maybe I should rethink that. I
Yes,
mean,
and one thing that I really like is just if you're doing these scenes that appeal to a relatable emotion, you could be the person who gets somebody into a genre they've never considered before. A lot of my older books are Why Choose books, which is where it's one girl who has several boyfriends and they're all very happy together. And I had a lot of people who were like, I've never read that before, but I saw this on TikTok and absolutely loved it. Or I have a friend who has 300,000 TikTok followers who posts that a very similar, like she posts Mafia Why Choose, and she has 300,000 followers from posting on TikTok about it. And you can get somebody into something they've never considered, which is something that I really love about it. And posting those emotional scenes and the relatable things is if you can get somebody to relate and empathize or sympathize with your character, then it doesn't matter nearly as much how spicy the book is or whether it's sci-fi or romantasy or whatever. if you can get somebody to fall in love with your character, then that's what matters.
Kind of circling to that, the TikTok shop, which I think has been around for, gosh, a year maybe or so. I might be
Around a
out of
year.
it, but yeah, and I've seen a lot of authors who've had some success with putting their books out there, doing the TikTok shop, and then marketing as well. Do you think that if you have the bandwidth, because I'm sure, especially if you're doing paperbacks and that sort of sales, do you think that that is an effective route to take? And I mean, we've seen authors that have done well, but do you think that that is something that you would explore as well? Like,
So
if somebody wanted to get involved in that.
Yeah, so I personally do use TikTok Shop, but I don't do it as much as my slideshows because obviously it does require a lot more bandwidth. The type of content I post for my TikTok Shop is what I call aesthetic content. So I've got my book, just so that I'm not advertising my book, I've got the Atlas of Token and I've got it on a beautiful background, this cool picture frame or a plain enough background or whatever. And I've got it and I'm flipping through. Oh, that's illustrated. That's cool. I didn't know that. I did not open this when I bought it at all. But I've got these illustrated pages and I'm flipping through it and I'm talking about it and I'm saying, oh my gosh, did you know there's an Atlas of Token and it's got these beautiful sprayed edges and foiled hardcover. And I'm really talking up the book, but I'm also going to give, again, that's where we're going to see that universal fantasy play in really well. We want to appeal to that universal fantasy when we're talking up the book because we're not necessarily doing a scene from the book. So the universal fantasy is going to be the reason to get people to buy it. And there's also a misconception that you have to have special editions. You're an author and you're signing a book and mailing it to someone. That's a special thing. That's a special enough edition to do just fine on TikTok Shop. But again, the big thing is you have to post every day to do really well and to consistently do well. And if you can post 3 times a day, I recommend it. Everyone I see that does really, really well with it posts at least 2 or 3 times a day, unless they have really extra super special magical editions, or if they're putting money into promotions or ads, which I will add, if you're going to put money into views on TikTok, I would pick a video that already has good views and use their promote feature versus their actual ads platform. I've seen so much better return with their promote feature because it doesn't go based off of where you want the video to go. It goes based off of what TikTok thinks is going to get the most views and what TikTok thinks will go viral. Because if you use the promote feature and then that video goes viral after the promote, then TikTok's going to be then you're going to be like, I'm going to use the promote feature again, right? If you pay $30 to get 6,000 views, but then the next day after the promotion is ended, it gets another 30,000 views, then heck yeah, you're going to use that feature again. And the average person is more likely to use that feature. And it goes off of the algorithm is the big, big thing that I love about that feature. So if you're doing TikTok Shop and you want to put money into ads, I would use that promote feature. And very recently, you can also use the promote feature on slideshows. You just have to do commercial-friendly audios. I've been using Taylor Swift audios on mine, even though I'm not technically supposed to because I am technically advertising my books. Although she does get paid for me posting, because TikTok pays her for views, technically I'm still not supposed to. I want to clarify that because I don't want people to be like, well, you use it, that means it's fully legal. I do things imperfectly too. I do things that I'm not supposed to. But if you use commercial sounds, you can use that promote feature on slideshows, especially if you have one that got 10,000 views. If you use that promote feature and get it up to 20,000 views, then TikTok might be like, cool, we're just going to make this go viral now because when it went up to the 20,000 views, people watched the video for pretty long. And another good determiner with
One
that
quick
favorite.
question on that,
Oh, sorry.
for me, one quick question for me on this, because I'm high activator and strategic, which means we like shortcuts. Would you tell me, wench, do a month of content at least before you start putting money into the platform?
Do a month of
do you want
content
people to
at
have the
least
slow
before
break
you
on?
start. Do not put money into a video if it is not showing viral potential and if it has not proven to
Right.
increase your sales. That's what I'm going to say.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you have a video that has 50,000 views and 30 favorites, do not pour money into it. It's not going viral in the place that sells books. It's going viral in you're writing, your orc romances. It's not going viral in the orc romance girly groups. It's going viral in the World of Warcraft player groups, and they're real confused, but they're scrolling. Or not necessarily that, but you know what I mean? Like, it might be going viral in the wrong place if you're not also seeing the other.
Yeah, all the horde players are going to be very, very confused. I was a horde player for a number of years. So
People
what
who
about
are
you, Kate? Were
really
you
into
horde or
Lord of the
alliance?
Rings are going to be very confused about orc romance. People who are just Lord of the Rings people
Yeah,
are
well,
going to be
them
like,
too. Yeah.
these
Yes.
orcs are really? Because that's what they'll picture.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Have
not the
you
orcs
ever seen
from.
Lord of
I'm
the
sorry to
Rings?
say, the orcs from Lord of the Rings. They are not. Yeah, no, that's a different type of orc
I never remember
altogether. No,
his name,
that
but the
makes sense.
Ariana Grande ponytail orc.
Oh, yeah.
You know who I'm talking about, though. If I say Ariana Grande orc, we know who he is.
Yes,
But anyway,
yes,
so,
yes.
but basically what I'm saying is, if you're seeing comments and seeing that this is not people who are interested in your book, and it's not going viral towards people who are interested in reading it, don't put the money into that. But I'm not going to
Right.
say don't put money into something within 30 days. I'm not going to say that, because if you have a video that's at 20,000 views and has 200 saves and 2,000 or 3,000 likes, which is above 10% on likes, and then you've got another 200 saves and you've started to see a boost in income from that, ride that wave. If you want to put more money into it, if you see the views slowing down, but that piece of content has started making you money, you're going to see a much better return on any dollar you spend on that than something that you're like, I'm testing a brand new hook that's never been posted and it's at 200 views now and hasn't hit that little bit of success, but I want to see what happens when it gets 5,000 views. Spend the money on that, because chances are it's not going to then go viral. But if it's already shown viral potential by getting like 10 or 20,000 views, absolutely spend money on it.
Right.
Spend $30, test it out, see what the $30 does. But just use the promote feature, which is sometimes it's labeled as get more views, but you just click the 3 dots on the actual video. You click the 3 dots in the corner, and then it's a little flame picture, emoji, whatever, and it says either promote or it'll say get more views. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to straight up tell you, don't do it until you've done 30 days. I would say don't do it unless you've seen proof of sales.
Sure. That
And
makes
those
sense.
favorites and the proper interaction are proof of sales.
Right. So like the favorites and the interaction is really probably the better indicator of like something truly viral. Because
Exactly.
something could go viral just with views. It's a different kind of viral, I guess. It's
Right,
the interaction
so-
that's what matters most.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily different viral, it's just viral for the wrong audience. I had somebody who was like, I
Sure.
have a video that's at 100,000 views, but all of the comments are confused men who are saying, oh my God, I can't believe women go for such toxic men. And it's like, this is a stalker romance, sir. We're not going for that type of man. It's a book.
Shield the innocent. Yes.
But yeah, if those are all your comments, then don't
We don't
put
all need to
money
know
into
that,
that,
yeah.
because then you're just going to get a bunch more of those comments.
Well, it's
Yeah.
it's delivering to the wrong audience, and it's just going to keep delivering to that wrong audience, and then you're
Exactly,
paying
and
for
it'll
it to
keep
go to
on
the wrong
adding.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do to prevent it from delivering to that audience, or is that just TikToking?
Sometimes it just happens on accident. A good start is don't send your content to your husband for an extra view and an extra like, because his algorithm's going to be different than yours. Unless you have my husband,
Yep.
and the only difference in our algorithms is that sometimes he gets Magic the Gathering videos instead of Dungeons and Dragons videos.
Hey. I don't know.
Listen, at 20 bucks, I paid human dollars for my husband to play a game with, I think it was Luke, I guess.
Yeah. Last
And
year.
then after the game, about 2 hours after the game, I ran into him in the lobby. Not my husband, Gygax. I ran into him and I was like, listen, you DM'd a game for my husband, Jacob, and he's like, oh my God, he was great. I loved his character. He like described his character. Very nice man. I was like, I need to also get a selfie with you so that we can tell our D&D group that both of us played D&D with you. They are going to lose their minds. Only thing better would have been if like Brennan Lee Mulligan were DMing or something. But yes, so my husband and I are very into WotC stuff. I'm just not as into magic as he is.
Yeah.
Sorry, total tangent, basically.
No. You're good.
But the big thing when it comes to staying on the right side is making sure that your account is optimized for book talk, which it means you are only interacting with book talk videos. If you are, so I know you said no politics. This is not going to be a political statement. It's just going to be, if you're on your account that is for your books, like have a separate account if you want to scroll through for personal things. If you want to scroll through and get mad at politicians, or if you want to scroll through and see cats, or if you want to scroll through and see mermaid performers swimming underwater beautifully because you're jealous of their $3,000 or $5,000 tails, do that on a different account. That was oddly specific.
I related to it.
I have a lot of friends who are professional mermaid performers, which means I end up seeing a lot of that type of content. Because I used to like hang out on the fringes of that industry. It's a big industry. Anyway, so do that all on your own personal account that's separate from your book talk account. Only interact with book talk content on that account, especially genre content. So like, Jack, I don't want you on romance talk because you're not writing romance. You don't need to be looking at stalker romances on that account. You need to be finding other sci-fi authors. And authors and book talkers that appeal to your prime audience.
My same audience. Right.
Exactly.
Which I think is actually relevant for you to say, because my first thought was like, number one, I need to download TikTok onto my phone because I don't have it. I'm one of those.
App Store.
Yeah. No, I know how to find it.
Go create an account, Jack.
What I mean is, like, I was going to do some research and actually look into it, but probably with a personal account. And then, but I think that's good advice, because there's some folks who probably have a personal account, and maybe that's the one that you use to poke around in other places that aren't necessarily related to, right? If you wanted to do that research just in general and not specific to your genre, because also for me, with BookFunnel, I would also want to look at those other genres so that when a romance author asks, I have something to tell them, right? Or an author in another genre as well. So yes, I would keep that to a separate account.
Yes. Yeah. And like if you're doing like romance, for example, you don't necessarily have to stick to your darkness and spice level, but I would at least make sure you're staying on romance book talk. Thriller, especially like domestic thrillers, have gotten really big lately on TikTok, especially with a female audience. So make sure that you're not accidentally shifting over towards that domestic thriller audience now and then. When you're doing like romance books.
What do you think about like hashtag? Like, are hashtags a good way to look for your specific genre, or if you're trying to stay within sort of a niche or anything like that? Like for Jack, just getting started, like he should be hashtag sci-fi, right?
One thing you can do when you are just getting started is you can actually use TikTok's search function, and that top bar will be like videos, creators, top, shop, whatever. You can actually scroll that top bar in the search feature once you've searched for something to the button that says hashtags, and you can actually follow a hashtag, which is going to make it a lot easier to narrow down and optimize your account. So if you follow that hashtag, that's also going to be very helpful, because once you've followed a few hashtags and liked a few videos under that hashtag, you have to go back over to your For You page, which is that main page that's just the TikTok algorithm nightmare, and it's going to start with like, I don't know, parkour and cat videos and prank videos or whatever, and then like the occasional
girls dancing,
and then like a girl dancing, because it's trying to figure out where you're at. It's trying to figure out what you like. Also be warned on that FYP, if you find something that angers you, if you watch that for more than 20 seconds, it's gonna make you watch more of that thing that angers you. So if you see something and you know it's gonna set you off, hold down on the screen, click the button that says not interested once it pops up, and get rid of it. But when you're doing Book Talk specifically, anything that's not Book Talk, hold down on that screen and click not interested.
I need to do that.
And
I need
if
to
you're
clean up
anything
mine.
like my husband, don't just watch a video politely just in case it gets interesting. If it's not interesting within the first three, this is just general TikTok advice. If you're not actually interested in a video in that first 3 seconds, do yourself a favor and just keep scrolling, because if you watch it for more than 3 seconds, it's going to show you more of that creator. And if you watch it for more than 20 seconds, it's going to show you more of that type of content. And if you watch it for more than 20 seconds, it's going to show 5 other people that video. Do yourself and other people a favor. And if you truly have zero interest in something and can't tell what it's about within 3 seconds, keep scrolling. Which is another thing I always see, is that people will waste that first 3 seconds and be like, "Hi guys, I'm Kate and I'm an author." Once you say your name in that first 3 seconds, there's also always a pause before they start talking. There's the go, "Hi guys." Like, there's always a pause. Don't pause. Immediately go into your point, because people will keep scrolling if not.
Yeah.
Hot tip. But basically, use that not interested feature to get yourself onto Book Talk only very, very rapidly. I can generally optimize an account to be Book Talk only within 20 minutes. And then all I have to do is scroll through for while my videos are posting, which is about 2 minutes. And that's also a good way, if you are seeing low views and you can't figure out why, then check your For You page, check that algorithm, and make sure it's still showing you Book Talk videos. Because if it's suddenly showing you a video of a wife pranking her husband by wearing a dinosaur blow-up costume instead of her wedding dress, if it's showing you that when you have optimized this account to be like Book Talk, that means that TikTok is working on and rebooting their algorithm a little bit. They're messing with it, which means your views are going to be lower, because you're not the only one seeing this video. They're showing this super viral video to everyone who logs onto the app that day and other viral videos. So if you're seeing low views and you see that, it's not you, it's the algorithm, because everyone else is seeing that. They're not seeing your books. They're seeing this random viral content that went viral 3 months ago, because TikTok is doing some reboots and the algorithm is not refined to your tastes in that moment. And it's not because it's not just you, because it's all of your normal types of viewers. They're not seeing the type of content they want to see, which is your content. So like, if your stuff is consistently, like, if it's doing badly when it's usually doing okay, or if it's doing like worse than usual, it's probably just the algorithm getting screwed with on the like back end of things. So if you're seeing non-Book Talk things despite scrolling for 2 minutes a day, basically, that could be the reason why.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm looking at these hashtags now, and it's really interesting to see the number of posts on each hashtag. So I'm like,
yeah, that doesn't super matter. You can actually, I've been using like Instagram hashtag trackers to find out, and like SEO, which is search engine optimization. I've been using those types of trackers to find out what search terms people actually use. And TikTok has a new search engine feature where you can see what people are actually searching for on Book Talk, because those are going to be the types of hashtags you want to use. You want to use things people are actually looking for.
Right. Well, Kate, thank you for joining us today. We're going to have to wrap here for time, but
I told you talked to me about TikTok for however long
I know,
you want.
and I wish we're kind of butting up here against a time constraint that I have, and so I really do wish that like we could just keep going, because I think we could. So I think we'll definitely have you back in the near future. We'll want to keep in touch. But no, this was awesome. Go ahead, take a moment here to just plug your stuff. Where can people find you and your courses and things like that?
Yeah, so all of my social media is at Kate Hall Biz. If you search for Kate, Kate, Hall, Hall, Biz, Biz. If you search for that on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, you'll find me. I think it might even be my Snapchat handle at this point. So if you want to watch some of my educational content that's free, my Kate Hall Biz TikTok is going to be the place to go. But if you want to check out my courses, they are located at aligndigital.com. I'm going to have them put in the show notes, because it's spelled weird and nobody can pronounce it, because I tried to be clever instead of being normal. I was like,
Yeah.
like aligning your social media with your business's needs. And people are like, Aileen? Who's Aileen? And I'm like, she's not a person. Just
Yeah.
the line spelled badly.
Right.
And then some people are like, oh, align. So like you work with dentists? Oh.
Yeah. You must. Right. Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in
but
the show notes so that people can find you.
yes, and I have a few courses, but my biggest, most popular one, if you specifically want to learn about TikTok, is TikTok for authors. But if you just want to write those good hooks and use them, not just for TikTok, but if you are like, I hate TikTok actually, and I hate you for talking about it, but I want good hooks, then that one would be Book Marketing Pro. And I have a couple of
Yeah.
others, so those are the big ones.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thanks again, Kate. We could keep going, I know, but we do need to wrap here. Unfortunately, I really wish we could, but thank you again for joining us today. Emma and Kelly, my co-hosts, thank you too for being here as well. And thank you to our viewers, everybody watching the podcast. Don't forget, subscribe here on YouTube. We do reply to comments. If you have questions or anything like that, feel free to post those below. Obviously, if you have questions for Kate, I don't know if Kate's going to be stalking our YouTube comments. Or
I
not.
will try,
maybe
but
you will be.
I have
You're welcome to.
ADHD, so
No, you're
straight
fine.
up
You're
DM
fine.
me on socials if you have
Yes.
a serious
Exactly.
question, or email me.
Right.
I have an email form on my website. Like, if you need to
Right.
talk to me, email me, because
Yes. We'll make sure that there's links to all your stuff in the show notes as well.
Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos from BookFunnel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.